companies come in with their equipment and destroy the roads out in the rural area and the bridges, and they leave, and the cost of repair is left to the townships and the counties. The other thing is, the fracking has been around for a good long time. Horizontal fracking and drilling has only been around for about 20 years. So when you go horizontal for a good long ways, you really don't know where you're at, because the stuff that comes out of the well during the vertical drilling down to 6,000 feet, you know what that is. The other concern that I've read articles on is that they claim there's over 500 chemicals that are used in the fracking process, and all of them are carcinogens. So if you could answer those questions, thank you.
Well, I'll do the last one first. It occurs to me that everything we eat, drink, breathe, wear is carcinogen. I didn't know of anything in the world that doesn't cause cancer. I mean, how many times have you read that, well, sugar causes cancer? A month later, it's coffee causes cancer. I don't want to make light of it, but I know of no proof that that's the case. And again, there's just been thousands of things that people claim cause cancer. I've seen no proof that that's the case. So that would be my reply to that. On the roads, I'm glad you brought that up, because we just talked to one of the county commissioners here. We're in the process of coming to agreements with township trustees, county commissioners. There's no advantage to an ExxonMobil. You may not like ExxonMobil, or when you pull into the pump, you see, you're paying $3 a gallon. Excuse me. But there's no advantage to a company that size to come in, do what you have said, and just leave everything there for everybody else. There's just no advantage for them to do that. They won't do that. When you're talking about an ExxonMobil or a Shell or a Chevron, and ladies and gentlemen, that's who we're talking about. The capital investment needed for Utica Shale for the directional drilling to go that deep, you're talking about these major oil companies, huge multinational oil companies that are going to spend a lot of money to come into Ohio. And we are working with township trustees, and we will, and Rebecca's going to be doing a lot of that. But we are going to be working with them. We want to keep the roads up. We want to make sure that they're repaired, because you're right, there's going to be a lot of heavy trucks going on those roads and bridges. So we're in the process of drafting up agreements that we think township trustees and county commissioners will be happy with, that we're going to provide, that we're going to repair roads, we're going to build roads. We're going to do it right. We've learned our lessons from Pennsylvania, from West Virginia. That's one of the advantages we have, because we get to see what mistakes were made in those other states. I'm sorry, the middle question, the one was on the roads, and the one on the cancer, what was in the middle?
Horizontal fracking, horizontal drilling.
Oh yeah, you know, again, I'm not an engineer, but I was in Pittsburgh about a month and a half ago. I got to tell you, I mean, if anybody familiar with Washington, PA? I used to say Washington, and my son, who didn't grow up in Appalachia, would yell at me all the time. It's not Washington, Dad, it's Washington. But anyway, in Washington, PA, 79 to Pittsburgh. Used to be, when I was growing up, that was all hill country, farms, there was nothing there. You go over there today, I tell you, go over. Take to Washington, PA, go up to Pittsburgh. It is 42 miles of homes, shops, office buildings, nonstop for 42 miles, and it's all because of shale development in Pennsylvania. It's an incredible thing to see. Williamsport, Pennsylvania, is unbelievable. Little League World Series. We actually had to tell them that we would vacate all the hotels over there for 3 weeks during the World. We had to do that because of the Little League World Series. But the development in that city has been incredible. Now I forgot the question.
I just wanted to add something on both the roads and the water. On the roads, actually a lot of the companies are building the roads. I was up in Dover just a couple of weeks ago and drove on one of the roads that one of the companies that's drilling laid down. And you know, we've all heard the local governments complaining over and for good reason, over the last couple of years, you know, that they don't have enough funds, that they're facing a budget crisis, that because of the cut in the local government funds, they're gonna have challenges. And what we're gonna see when these tax revenues come in is we're gonna have local governments who have more money than they have any idea what to do with. So it's gonna be our job in the Liberty Movement to make sure they use that money responsibly. And one of the ways they need to use that money responsibly is to make sure it goes to places like roads and things like that, to infrastructure and not to things like gazebos, like we've seen in some places. I'm not saying we've seen that here, but it has happened across the state. On the water, I just wanted to add, a lot of what you have heard about issues with water came from Pennsylvania, because in Pennsylvania, they really got going before they had good regulation, and they also don't have a lot of wells to put the water down in Pennsylvania. In Ohio, we have how many wells? I don't know. It's
Over 15,000 right now.
so there are things in the water that you wouldn't want to drink, you wouldn't want to swim in it, and Ohio recognizes that, the companies recognize it. There are strict rules and regulations on what you can do with the water. And in Ohio, what you're going to see is it's going to go down in the same wells that those same kind of chemicals are going down, have been going down into for years. So, so we are protecting the environment in that way.
And on the horizontal drilling, I remember the question. This isn't your grandfather's oil wells. You ever saw the movie Giant? The big derricks in Texas all over the place. Well, the derricks are there. You're going to see in Ohio what you've never seen before. They're about 80, 90 feet high, and at nighttime they light up like a Christmas tree. These things operate 24/7. But the derrick is only going to be up for about 45 days, and then it'll be gone. But they use these it's all computer generated and operated. Everything they do and how they get down into the ground, where they're supposed to go, how they avoid any of the pratfalls is all computer generated. I mean, the sophistication of this thing is unbelievable on how they do horizontal drilling. So
I would hope that your agency keeps a good handle on the drilling rigs, because if you want to see what happens to the land, go down to Chatham Township in Medina County when the oil boom back in, I believe, probably in the 40s happened, and it destroyed the soil down there, and the farmers are just beginning to make that land productive.
and I don't want to cast aspersions here on anyone, but in Ohio, it's been the conventional oil and gas drilling, or what we call stripper wells. The members we represent have not been in Ohio. Ashland Oil had a little one back when they were a company. We've not drilled in Ohio because they were stripper wells. It wasn't economically feasible for the large multinationals to come in. So a lot of the operations were done by, and a lot of good people, don't get me wrong, a lot of good people in the business. But there are some that were a little rogue. You're talking about smaller operations, much smaller operations that have operated in this state for, well, since the 40s. So these people, like I say, a lot of good ones, but occasionally you're gonna run into some rogues. Hopefully that won't happen in this case. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. There is a difference. Someone mentioned Pennsylvania thing. Marcellus, the Marcellus shale is natural gas. That's why those steel companies are building in Youngstown, in Lorain, and in Middletown, because of the large supply of cheap natural gas. It runs about $3.34 right now in the United States. Worldwide, it's running about $20. So you've got an unlimited, probably a 200-year supply of natural gas out of the Marcellus that supplies these steels and plastic companies. The Utica is oil, gas, and even more importantly, wet gas. Wet gas is all we call the amines, propane, methane, which makes plastic products. About everything we use in America comes from those products. Right now, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania are bidding against each other to try to get Shell Oil to build a cracking facility. That facility would separate the wet gases, and then if you do that, you're going to attract chemical and plastic companies to be near the cracking facility because they use that in manufacturing of their product. If we can land that in Ohio, that's the icing on the cake. Oh yeah, that's exactly why you do horizontal. If we do the traditional drilling, if you had a Utica shale formation, you'd have to drill. If you're going straight down, you'd have to drill 30 wells. Keep going straight down and bring it up. And horizontal, you're going in one swoop with one well. So that's why horizontal drilling is so important.
Hello. I just wanted to mention that I saw an article in the paper, so who knows how credible it is, that in an area, I believe in Ohio, toward the eastern Ohio, there's an area where they've had some seismic activity. They've never had it before, but apparently the epicenter is right where they're doing some fracking. Can you address the potential for seismic activity, stabilization, and that sort of thing? Also, as far as those fluids go that you use, how do you destroy them, and have you come up with a good way of destroying them on, I don't know, an incinerator of some sort, or portable incinerator? The fluids running around are obviously a big problem.
Well, the answer to your both questions is the same. There's no fracking. It's Youngstown's what you're talking about, Mahoning County. Those are deep well injection pits. That's where you drill down 5, 6, 7, 10,000 feet, and that's where you store the wastewater from the production. There are no Utica or Marcellus, to my knowledge, in Mahoning County. Now, there's been seismic activity up there. There's been fault lines up there since the beginning of time. So I don't know that there's a possibility, but it's not fracking. It's not Utica, it's not Marcellus. These are deep well injection pits. That's the favored method of dealing with wastewater, to drill these wells, deep well injection wells. But you could also send them to wastewater treatment facilities, whether it's owned by the city, county, or privately, or you can treat it on site, which some companies have, and then put it right back in the same hole you brought it out of. Yes, sir.
I've heard reports about the amount of that that is recovered when you drill down these wells. What percentage of the equipment is forced in there is recovered?
You're talking about the water we use for fracking? You know, I really don't have an answer. I don't know the answer to that. How much can we reuse as opposed to putting it in the deep well injection, or?
Right, well, I've heard reports that as much as 80% of what is used is recovered and treated.
If you use a wastewater treatment, yes, that's correct. But again, I gotta tell you, the favored method for most companies is just to put it in a deep well pit. Yes, sir.
What are these chemicals that you're talking about? What are they called that everybody's so afraid of? Are they bad owners?
Well, you want to answer that? It's on the site.
Yeah, I don't know. There are purposes for the chemicals. One of them is, when you shoot sand down into the rock, you need sort of a lubricant in there with it. And so different companies use different kind of lubricants. They also put things down there that keep bacteria from growing. So some of the products that are down there are actually things that we use up here, on the ground that are normal products, and there are purposes for all of them. Different companies use different types of chemicals to do that. Virtually all of those chemicals are disclosed. There is a proprietary portion that is not disclosed, but they're not just shooting chemicals down there, for no reason, just to shoot chemicals. It's just part of the process. If you didn't shoot the ones not to eat the stuff down there, you would eat up the oil and we would get nothing out of it. So there are purposes for all of it. And Lisa Jackson with the EPA had recently said that, there's never been a instance of groundwater contamination. And Lisa Jackson, you'll all remember, is the one who over in Copenhagen a couple years ago said, oh, we don't need Congress to vote on cap and trade. We can do it all through the EPA, which we know they're trying to do now. So she is an extremist, as we know, and she has recently said that. So obviously you have to take care of it properly, and Ohio, fortunately, has a lot of regulations in place. They actually passed a bill a couple of years ago addressing a lot of this.
I live in Canada. Our water is also shot. On these leases,
Before you get to that, could I just add to what she said on the chemicals? It's all disclosed on the Ohio Department of Natural Resources site, with the exception of some proprietary information. And that's not because they're trying to hide harmful things. It's very similar to additives put in gasoline. Gasoline's gasoline. My mother-in-law says, I buy only Shell gasoline. Well, the fact is, she's probably buying BP or Marathon, because they provide about 60% of the gas in the state. What you're buying with Shell are their additives, and that's proprietary information. Each company has different additives, which makes the gas unique to that company. That's very similar to what we use on the chemical process. Probably 90% of the chemicals are disclosed, You can find them on the ODNR site, and the ones in art are proprietary because each company uses different.
And I wanna go back. And, you know, forgive me, I just heard this in a meeting yesterday, but a couple years ago, when they were passing Senate Bill 165, when they made the determination of what had to be disclosed, there was an environmental group. Do you remember the name of the environmental group? There was an environmental group that was on the other side. Obviously, there's always an environmental group on the other side. They said, we really want you to have to disclose this. And the industry said, okay. And they put it in the Senate bill. And so now the industry is disclosing exactly what the other side wanted them to disclose. And now they're complaining, well, you didn't, you know. Okay.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
But on the, well, they declare milk and hazardous substance. They did, they declared it a hazardous substance if you spill it. Getting back to these leases. Now, some outfit that starts with an A out of, sending me leases. And they offered me a very small amount for a forever lease. What should a lease offer?
Well, first of all, I would recommend you find an attorney that you know and trust. Get someone that's reliable. Don't sign anything with that. I hate to say that because I kind of agree with Mark Twain. If it wasn't for attorneys, we wouldn't need attorneys. But in this case, you got to have someone who knows what they're doing. But yeah, I would recommend. I can tell you down in Athens. I don't know if it was in the papers up here. I think it was Tuesday. There were like 800 landowners at the fairgrounds in Athens County. They were getting. I'm not sure. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I know what they were getting $1,500 an acre, $2,500 an acre if oil is found on the lease, and then they were getting 18.5% royalty of what comes out of the ground. Back in the back.
A psychologist once told me that one can't fear the unknown. So what we do is we fear our worst expectation, what could happen. And that's what some of the environmentalists appeal to. I did a 10-year penance, I'll call it, down in Houston, Texas. And knowing the major oil and gas companies, I would like to give them a map to my home. Because those are the roads I want them to drive on. You'll find them in better condition than one could ever imagine. They have no incentive to do anything but to please the community. The other thing is I'm a past chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. And what we're working on, there is not a business that the velocity of money won't touch here when these wells come into our community. You know, you think they have to get their clothes washed, they have to eat, they have to sleep somewhere. And these guys have been known to drink a beer or two, too. So there is not a component of our economy that won't be touched favorably. And I, for one, believe that they're going to leave our community in much better shape, and certainly not just from an economic position, but our infrastructure, than we could ever do based on our taxes. So we welcome you with open arms.
Well, thank you. I couldn't agree. I can't add to that. Thank you. I'm going to have you speak the next time.
Yeah, what I was going to ask is, I did have somebody contact me, and but in any case, my question is, you were talking about the 18%. Well, those horizontals go through a lot of different people's properties. So, what do they mean by 18%? You know, for instance, I've got a little over 8 acres. Well, if they're going to frack, you know, they're going to frack horizontally, they're going to go through several of the neighbors' yards, acreage. So, how is that broken down? That 18% between, you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, and again, I'm not a land agent, so take everything I say here with, don't take it to the bank. But as I understand it, people aggregate. Neighbors will get together with their acreage, and they'll have an attorney that will work those issues out, so that you know going in what your share is going to be with your neighbors. It's all one contract that your neighbors and you all sign. Because you're right, on the Utica Shale, you need a lot of acreage. You can't do a 5-acre farm, and you're not going to do that. But it's my understanding that that's how they address that. The neighbors sit down with an attorney, and they draw up a contract so that all the people are treated fairly in the lease and in the royalties.
Yeah, thanks.
Just a couple of things. You probably know that what's going on in Medina County, I'm kind of involved with it. And just a few things to reiterate a couple of points. One, Rebecca's point, and it can't be stated too many times, that the regulations in Ohio, when compared to the regulations in Pennsylvania, it is apples and oranges. Ohio's regulations are so well written that anytime somebody comes to you and addresses you with a problem that occurred in Pennsylvania, I don't want to say it can be ignored, but you can't put a whole lot of stock in it because Ohio regulations are done so much differently. Secondly, and I think the most important point is the industry is regulated at the state level. It's permitted through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and the EPA is involved with the industry itself. So from a county level, from a city level, and you guys know me, I'm a limited government guy. I'm not going to get involved in something that's not within my jurisdiction. This is run through the state, so the state is going to be involved in the process of permitting. In Medina County right now, there's two issued permits. The only one active is Richmond Farms down in Harrisville Township, and they'll probably go active this month as far as starting to move dirt and bring in equipment. I was, is it Terry, is that right? I was hunting down in Carroll County this past weekend, and just south of Carrollton on Route 43. There's an active rig right there, and it looks like a Cedar Point ride. It's an impressive structure. We passed it at night, and it was pretty impressive, and of course that goes away after a period of time. We've met a few times with the group doing the well down in Harrisville Township, is Devon Energy, and more than anything, they want to be good neighbors. They've told us, hey, if we're driving on the roads and there's trash on the roads, and you call me, I'm going to send my guys to pick up the trash. And if there's a pothole that gets created, we're not going to wait till the job's done. We're going to get somebody out there to fix it when it becomes a problem. Are there going to be inconveniences for some of the folks who live around there? Absolutely. There's going to be traffic, and there's going to be things that go on that they haven't had to experience in the past. Mike Slade, our county engineer, Mike's kicking himself because he thinks we probably could have got a bridge redone at the expense of the oil company if we figured this out about 6 months ago. So they are coming in, they want to be good neighbors, and the potential for economic increase is so high that they are willing to do what they need to do in order to have the industry be a success here in Medina County. And part of that success is to do it without question, to be environmentally friendly, without impacting the drinking water or anything else that goes on. If not, it's not a success. So, everything that I can see so far, the energy folks, they're going to make money, other people are going to make money, and they're going to do it by being good stewards.
You folks are pretty much preaching to the choir here. Do you ever appear in front of less friendly audiences?
Yeah, and there's a group that we have on the ground. It's called EID, Energy in Depth. They have people on the ground, there's 4 of them, and their job is to, wherever there's town hall meetings or wherever there's a mixed group, their job is to get there and to respond and to any of the misstatements made by our friends on the other side. So, yeah, and we do participate. But we're tired of that, frankly. They're still going to do it, but that's not what Rebecca and I are going to do. We want to talk to you people. We want to talk to responsible officials of government, and we're not there to tell you what to do or what we want to do. We're there to listen to what you need. Tell us what you need. We'll work with you, and that's what we want to do. Because you go to these meetings and people are yelling and screaming and throwing accusations out. We'll still do that. We have people who will do that. But our focus is going to be on the positive of what can we do to help the community.
I just want to add to that, there are those people who are opposed to this and will always be because they're the environmentalists and that's what they do. Then there are those people who have real questions and real concerns that need to be answered, and it sounds like a lot of people here fall in that category. There are some people who may not be the choir, but who are reasonable. We are certainly happy to talk with those people. For example, we are part of an alliance we're going to be announcing next week with the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program, EID, Energy in Depth, which Terry just talked about in the Buckeye Energy Forum. We're going to form an alliance called the Ohio Energy Resource Alliance, and the whole goal of that is to answer people's questions. in the community, elected officials, community leaders, to answer questions. And for example, someone from the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program just last week did a presentation in front of the League of Women Voters. And that is not a crowd that is traditionally necessarily on our side. And they had some tough questions, and I think she did a great job answering them. So yeah, we're happy to preach to the choir. We're happy to talk to people who are not the choir yet, but who are reasonable enough that they'll listen. But yeah, we're not going to be talking to the people who are not with us, just because, and they never will be. And if you have opportunities, if anyone is a member of, a sportsman group or a Kiwanis group or a Rotary Club or anywhere that you think that people would have questions and you think it would be good for us to get in there and speak, let me know. We'll bring a panel in to answer their questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said he was, we do meet with sportsmen's groups because hunters go out to their normal place to hunt, and all of a sudden they see an 80-foot rig out there. So we do meet with sportsmen's groups and tell them what to expect, what to watch out for, what not to touch, that kind of thing.
And then there are people who just have, their inconveniences that maybe the industry didn't think about. I was just talking with the guy who does my job in Pennsylvania, and he said, a lot of the people that we talk to are the snowmobile associations, because for years there have been roads that have never been plowed because people didn't drive them, and suddenly the roads are being plowed and the snowmobilers are mad because there's nowhere to drive their snowmobiles. Well, he got the snowmobilers together with the people from industry, and they made a deal. Okay, we won't, plow these 3 or 4 feet on the side so you can continue to snowmobile. Those are the kind of things we're trying to figure out. What are the simple things? What are the inconveniences? What are the things that we can fix? And that's a whole group of people that would have been angry and opposed, and now they're not because it was a simple fix.
Follow the mic if you can. The gas and the oil and everything that's coming up is going to be used here in Ohio first? It's not going to be shipped to Mexico or China or anywhere else?
Well, if there's what we think is there, we don't have the capacity to refine all of it. But some, most of it will be refined and sold in Ohio. And I know one of the companies is working with the state of Ohio to upgrade rail. We have railroads that are out there that we can take the product from southeast Ohio to northwest Ohio. We don't have the pipelines yet, but we can do rail, because initially it'll take 8 to 10 years before you start hitting a real peak. So there won't be enough for pipeline construction initially, but we can ship by rail to northwest Ohio to the 2 refineries up there. We can barge it down the Ohio River to the refinery in Catlettsburg. So the vast majority of it, yes. And hopefully, I mean, if we can get that shell plant, then we're going to get a lot of product used here in Ohio.
I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about something, because it's something that has been controversial in other areas, which is, I know you may have heard about the Texas license plates. People are concerned that the people in Ohio are not getting the jobs. Governor Kasich has been very clear to all the industry that he wants Ohioans to get the jobs. And if you do see some out-of-state license plates, I don't want you to understand what's happening. These are not, they're not simple rigs. There are things that are technical, and you have to know what you're doing in order to do them and to do them safely. And so we're working with the local colleges and community schools in Ohio to make sure that we train Ohioans to be able to do it. We're not there yet. They don't have the programs, all the programs that are in place yet for all the jobs that are going to be needed. And so these are not wells that are going to be here for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 years and gone. I mean, these are wells that are going to be producing for the next 50 years. So this is long term. So you may, for the first year or so, you may see out-of-state license plate until we get Ohioans trained. But the companies, most of them have internal policies that, yes, we have to have the right people on the rig to do this responsibly, but they have internal policies. We're going to, then transfer over within a certain amount of time, quickly, into local employment so that we can employ the people from the local area. So if you do start seeing some, realize that this is just in the beginning. It is going to be Ohio jobs, and it's going to be long term.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Lots of folks who pay attention see that EPA, federal regulations seem to even make our Congress irrelevant in terms of what they do. And I'm wondering what kind of interference you expect and how you're going to manage that so that you can actually